edition of Active Living. We've got our traveling man here today, Jim Robeck. Jim's been traveling around the world again, and this time he's visited Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, Germany, and the Czech Republic. Welcome to our show, Jim.
Thanks. Glad to be back, George. It's been about 2 months since we came back just before Christmas, so it's been a little bit of time. But I'm getting a little bit of antsy right now, getting ready for my next trip.
Again?
Yes, in March we're going to go to Nepal and Bhutan.
Oh my God,
yeah.
You guys are crazy.
Crazy, yeah, for sure.
You never stay home.
Don't want to, really. There's so much to see in the world. You got to do it before you pass away.
All
hate
right.
to say that word.
Okay, expire.
Expire, that's
a
even
good
better.
word.
That's a good word, right.
Well, tell us about this latest trip you just took.
Certainly. I like to give a little recognition to a couple of people we had on our trip who were just excellent people. We met, there was a Heidi and Mel, the very elderly Jewish couple. They're really good, give us a lot of history because of the Jewish situation with all the countries we visited. There's Terry and David out of Oregon. We always had dinner with them, and two professors from Andrews University out of Berrien Springs, Illinois, or Michigan, and I lived there for quite some time. Brian and Peter, and there was another couple by Miguel and his wife. I can't remember her name, and then the person that really went with me was my daughter Lisa. So she really enjoyed this.
So it was a family trip.
Yes, it was, and she certainly enjoyed this. It worked out real well. So. Yeah, we started basically from Detroit and flew to, it's interesting, we flew all the way to Frankfurt, from Frankfurt to Munich, and Munich to Warsaw. So we had like 2-hour layovers in each one of those cities as we traveled. And so it was a little, it was good. I mean, it was kind of a break, but it was a long trip.
Your daughter's probably ready to come back after the flight, right?
Yeah, she was. There's no doubt about that. In fact, she got sick the last day there, which was really, really bad because she had to sit in the back 2 seats of the plane there, and the stewardess helped her out quite a bit, giving her pills and everything else. So because we had caught some bad stuff from the 2 people when we drove from Regensburg to Czech, they said, be honest, and they coughed all the way with their sickness and everything else, and so she caught it pretty bad. So, but here and there, but it was still a good trip. It was 17 days, and like I say, we started in Warsaw. Warsaw is the capital of Poland today.
Okay.
It was Krakow, which was the original capital, but a couple of things in Warsaw was basically it was the home of Frederick Chopin, and we went to the park where he has a statue and everything. They have concerts there in the summertime, and really nice. And then a couple of things there. Naturally was the food there. Naturally was Polish pierogies and cabbage rolls and all the good stuff, kielbasa and everything.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
Good stuff there. It was kind of interesting because Warsaw was bombed pretty heavily during the Second World War, but there was one street that was maintained, and what we found out was that was all headquarters for the German officers and that. One street, and it still remains today, is the only boulevard that was not bombed out. And
Really?
It was interesting, yeah.
And the German officers were living there,
yes.
and that was a section that was not bombed.
Was not bombed, yeah, it was amazing. And the basic thing there all too was that 400,000 Jews lived there, and over 90% of them were exterminated. They were taken to Treblinka and then finally to Auschwitz to be exterminated. So they wiped out, and then there's nice memorials there in Warsaw. And the last thing really in Warsaw was the Villanova Castle. Where the Polish kings were, basically honored, and this was a succession there. It was okay. There was a lot of stuff that was missing, but it was still good. It was from the days of King Sobieski, which was the third who was the king, and then he built this palace. And it was interesting. The W's are pronounced with a V, and the V's are pronounced with a W. So when you say Villanova, it's Villanova Palace, and it's kind of interesting. So that was pretty well. Warsaw, a nice city, but very popular today, well maintained, and transportation is fantastic there.
Really?
Yeah. And then from there we went to a town called Czestochowa. It's a town where there's supposed to be a painting for the Black Madonna, they call it.
Okay,
and
I've heard of it.
Yeah, and we went there, and basically it was the Pauline Monastery and of Jasna Gora. And again, the Black Madonna, it's a painting, it's been cut with a sword a couple times, and the day we went there, we couldn't get close to it because they had like 200 bishops having a mass there, so all the red caps and everything else, so we couldn't get close to it. I took a picture, but unfortunately, it was so far in the distance, it came out, but it was hard to see.
Right.
So that's all we could see there, but it was interesting there to stop there and see it, and unfortunately, we couldn't get close to it, so that was here nor there. Then we went, as we traveled to Krakow, we stopped at late in the afternoon it was a salt mine. It was called the Velitska salt mine.
Oh, really?
And it goes back, like 300 or 400 years, and this is where salt that was mined, it was almost worth the weight of gold, basically, because
Really?
it was an excellent salt. And down there, they had this big chapel, this big anti-room where they had the chapel and the church, and they had all these carvings of the salt in depicting Christ with the Last Supper, and many scenes from Christ. And,
This is actually down in the mine.
down in the mines,
Really?
yeah. We took an elevator all the way down, and they carved these things, and there was dark down there. They had horses down there, and they lived down there, and they loved to work down there because they got good wages. And it was interesting, and it was so well built down there. I mean, the timbers and everything else, I mean, just like palaces down there. It was amazing.
Really?
And then all these carvings on the wall were just so detailed. It's incredible. We'll have pictures when we go through this. And so is it really something to see as far? You have to see this. I mean, without a doubt, something to see there. And finally, we got to Krakow, which is the old capital of Poland, and so many things to see in Krakow. Too many things to see. And here again, we went to this castle. It's called W-A-W-E-L. So instead of pronounced Wawel, it's called Wawel Castle.
Okay.
So W is pronounced with a V.
Right,
So it's
right.
okay. It was an ornate.
Now, is Warsaw Warsaw over there?
Well, I guess so, yeah. Well, they would pronounce it, yeah, instead of Warsaw, Warsaw, yeah.
Okay.
So I guess that's the way you pronounce it. And once again, there was a Jewish district there with walls there, and they kind of lived in an area there, and they were very close to Schindler's factory, where
Right.
the Jewish were working there, and he tried to work with the people. At first he didn't, but later on he found what was happening there, so he did protect a lot of the Jewish people. And he had a sign on his factory. It says, "Whoever saves one life saves the world entire," which was kind of interesting. I love that particular line there. It was kind of interesting. So we saw the factory. You only could see the outside. We didn't go inside. We saw the outside with the plaques and everything. And then they had pictures of a lot of the people who actually were exterminated from the factory also. So it was kind of harrowing there. And
Did you go to the death camps? Or
yeah, that was, after we went, the one thing, we went to the town square. There was a beautiful town square, and there was the church they called the St. Mary's Church, and there was two steeples, and two brothers were building it. They were trying to outdo each other.
Okay.
And so the older brother decided that he didn't want to have his younger brother go higher, so he assassinated him, killed him. And then he had such remorse that then he killed himself.
Oh, my
but
God.
every hour on the hour from the larger tower, they have a trumpeter. He trumpets the music every hour on the hour.
Really?
Yeah, every hour, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And it's kind of interesting, right in that square there. And this is where we had one of the ladies in our group that she was pickpocketed. And I saw the girl who did it, but I couldn't verify it, and she was a young girl. And these gypsies are very, very good. She was well dressed, and unfortunately, I saw her that evening again. So they're there to pickpocket you. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. And then once we went through the town square is something else to see. We had dinner there a couple times at night there. Again, the pierogies and the soups. They had like 15 different soups. I mean, it's just something. The food is unbelievable, and it's what they call the Christmas tour. There's a lot of these Christmas booths that you sell in everything from ornaments to food to you
Right,
name it.
like little Christmas villages.
Oh
basically.
yeah, Christmas Village. And all these little houses, they're all,
Right.
they're like maybe 8 by 10 and had all their wares in there. And from there, then naturally we went to Auschwitz, and this was the most depressing. I mean, what I've seen in films and what I've saw in documentaries, it has no justice until you get there.
Right.
It was more. What can you say? It was worse than I imagined. Okay, and
Did they maintain it pretty much as
Yes,
it was
they
during
have.
the Second World War?
Yes, they have. Basically, you got Birkenau and Auschwitz. Birkenau is where the trains came in, they unloaded the people, and what they did, which was the most depressing picture, they had these German doctors that stood as the people were coming off the train, and all the women, children, they were directed to the left. They were going to die regardless of what.
Really?
And then anything, as they saw men coming through, that they looked like they were handicapped, crippled, or old, they were going to die with the women and children also. Only the healthy ones were taken to the right, which is only about 30%. So the rest were going to die, basically.
Really?
And this is where the Germans perpetuated two lies. The first thing was the fact that they said that we're going to relocate you from your towns, and which they did, but unfortunately that was a lie. And the second lie they perpetuated is that when they got there, they said, well, you're going to have to disrobe, and because of lice and disease, so you have to take a shower.
Yeah.
So this was the entrance to the extermination.
The gas chambers.
The gas chambers, yeah. And it was so sad that happened. And a couple of things there, which was real interesting there, was that after they were exterminated, as the bodies came out, they pulled all the gold teeth out.
Yep.
And they also, which I didn't know, they shaved all the hair off. And they used that for making, I don't know, carpets or bags or whatever the case may be, but I
Really?
didn't know that. So Birkenauer was really bad because that's basically horse stables. This is where they housed the people that were more, they're going to die anyways,
Right.
and they had the bunks, you know, from top to bottom. The healthier at top, the more ones that were less healthy were going to be in the bottom. They're going to die anyways, and so it's kind of really bad. And I think the worst thing was there was 4 exhibits that really caught your heart, basically. First, it was the utensils they brought with them because they thought they were relocating, the coffee
Right.
cups and all that. And then they had another exhibit of 80,000 pairs of shoes of all the people that were, you know, to the gas chambers.
Wow.
And then the hair, which I didn't realize that from the original talk about the hair that they shaved off all the people before they went to the gas chambers. And there was a whole exhibit of that. And lastly, the one that really caught your eye was the children's luggage. They put their names on it.
Oh.
They weren't going to get them back, you know, but they thought they were going to get them back.
Right.
But they're all there. There's a whole exhibit there. So, and I guess the upside of the whole thing, the guy that ran it, this commander of the whole Auschwitz, was named by Rudolf Haas, not Rudolf Hess, who was
Okay.
another culprit. Okay.
Okay.
And interesting there, he brought his wife. They took over this Polish home. And she thought it was Nirvana. She thought it was heaven. She thought it was paradise. And here she's living right next door to the camp where people are dying, being shot, being killed, hung, and everything else. She thought it was paradise.
Really?
And the crowning glory of the whole thing was that after the war, they got this guy, Rudolf Haas, brought him back, tried him in Poland, and they hung him at the gallows at Auschwitz. It was just fantastic. We saw right outside the gate there. I said, that was it. That made my day as far as Auschwitz
Perfect.
was. 'Cause, yeah, it was perfect ending to Auschwitz, you know. But
Right.
it was really something to see. So. But some of the conditions, the bunkers where the people had to live. Auschwitz was nice because a lot of brick buildings, which were much better than the Birkenau, which are all the horse stables there.
Right.
So it was much better, but again, they had the dungeons down there were not so good, and where they really tried some people where they had to keep them in these cells and everything else. And but it was bad, unfortunately, but that's what it was.
Sounds like a great education.
It was something to see. I mean, if you have to see it. I mean, there's no question. To give you a better understanding, I think there's 1.1 million Jews that were exterminated. They were exterminated at the rate of 12,000 people a day.
Wow.
That was a lot. How do you do 12,000 a day? You know, it's
That's
amazing.
incredible.
There was like $15,000 Soviet soldiers were exterminated there, like 23,000 gypsies and 25,000 other ethnic groups there.
So what do they do with the bodies? Do they dig a
Well,
dig
just
a
ashes.
big
Well, they were
they
ashes.
burned them all.
Yeah, they just burned them, and they were ashes,
Okay.
and they just scattered them out in the grounds there and
Okay,
everything else.
gotcha.
Yeah, so just the ashes there, right? So that was it there. Then we drove to Budapest. We went through the country of Slovakia, and we stopped there. We had snow going through there. I mean,
Really?
the mountains there, and then we stopped at a church they called Orsawaka. And it was a black wooden church, and we saw some really fine articles there. In the cemetery there, all these cemeteries were decorated with flowers, and I mean, they remember their dead. I mean, it's just amazing, that cemetery. I mean, so much to see, and it was just truly amazing what you saw there. And like I say, Budapest was a nice thing. You know, it was basically 2 towns.
Yep.
I guess Buda on one side, and I guess Pest on one side, and Buda on the other side.
Right.
And so much tradition there. We went to Hungarian dinner. We had lots of good food there. And then we went across to Buda, which was a big, kind of a castle on top from the church there. And
Big church up on the top.
yeah, and then you'd overlook the whole city.
Right.
You know, it was a beautiful scenery there, and so
Been there, done that.
yeah, it's really
Great
good. Something
place.
yeah, it's a great place to see, and there's so much to see in Budapest, and too hard to limit everything there, or, you know, talk about everything there. But it was a great town to visit, and that was our starting point for our Danube cruise. We got to
Right.
the boat there. In fact, we had trouble getting to the boat because a Chinese delegation came in. They had all these streets blocked off, and
Really?
the bus driver had to get special dispensation to make a right turn and get finally to our boat there. But we got there about 7 o'clock at night. It was dark, and we got on the boat, so it was pretty good. So Budapest was really fine, and from there, let's see. I think I'm going to skip a sheet here. We ended up going to, after Budapest, was that our first town was Bratislava in Slovakia.
Right.
And again, this is the capital of Slovakia. And the one thing that was neat there was it dates back about 2,000 years. Again, a lot of beautiful buildings there, so many, and then churches. This is the one thing that really bothered me today after I came back and thought about this. You know, all these beautiful churches, all the money that went to the gold, the silver, and you say, why? You know, I don't know if it's because of these bishops or whatever it was. I mean, this was the central part of towns, but
You had these dirt poor people
Yeah.
giving probably 20% of their income
or
to
more.
the
I
church,
mean, the whole life almost.
and they
savings.
built these humongous churches, gold leafed and all this
Oh,
in
and
the center of these
statues.
towns, and they're just unbelievable.
I know, and it just floors me today, and say,
Today they're not even used.
No, they're more
tourist
of a,
traps.
tourist traps. Exactly, exactly right. And like I say, the gold in that. Even go back to Krakow, which I mentioned. There was a church there with the citadel, and the ornateness, and there are these silver coffins and
Right.
gold. You're saying it's amazing. Say all these people just provided the all this to the churches. For what reason? I'm thinking
Now they want to go to heaven.
I guess I don't know if that's what how they indoctrinated these people, and so I think today, and it's kind of, even though I'm being Catholic, I'm not going against my religion and say, why, just why? It just keeps bothering me. But that's
Right.
that's here or there. But one thing we went to Bratislava, which is nice, was kind of the tour. What they call the Christmas tour, because every town we went to from this point forward,
Oh, yeah.
they held all these Christmas houses in every town. You can buy
Right.
all these Christmas ornaments, the food. I mean, and then there's one thing they call the chimney cakes, which is interesting. It was they had a wooden like a dowel, and they wrapped the dough around it. They cooked it over like a charcoal fire, and it would kind of brown, just like putting cinnamon rolls in your oven.
Right.
And then they rolled it in cinnamon, and they took it off, and they called it chimney cake, because once you took it off, the steam kind of came off the
Ooh.
funnel. It was like a funnel cake. Well, no,
Right.
it was like a chimney cake, and it was so good, So it was about $2, but it was pretty inexpensive, but it was very, very good. And so from there, then we went to Vienna, and Vienna again, comparing that to Prague, Czechoslovakia, I would take Prague, Czechoslovakia, or Vienna, even though they had a lot of the
Really?
Baroque buildings, a beautiful city, lots to see. The main thing was the big,
Big theater there.
yeah. Well, we went to a Viennese concert. It was very
you?
nice.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very good. I mean, it was about an hour and a half. It was well done, and it was something to see. And it was in one of the opera houses, naturally. But a lot of buildings there. Again, at Christmas festivities there. There was almost 4 areas where I had these Christmas things, and we went to all 4 and we got lost a couple of times. Wasn't sure we were going to get back to the center, but the one church that was always in the middle was the St. Stephen's Church, which I always come back to.
Right.
Right in the square. Then we knew we had to go down there to catch our bus back to the boat there. But then we saw it's famous there for the Leipzig horses are there. We took pictures. They took them from one part of the city. They walked them across the section there, and they walked them into their stables and everything else. And it was kind of a neat place. Yeah,
that was cool.
Yeah, it was a nice white horse. I took some pictures. They're very, very beautiful horses. And,
I've been there, but the horses weren't there.
Oh, they weren't?
No, they weren't there.
Oh.
So we went there and looked at the building. That
And that's
basically is
it.
what it was.
We saw the horses
Yeah.
go from one side to the other, and they had them in stalls there, and it was kind of neat. I don't know if they were doing some exercises in another part of the facility there, but they could walk them across like the street there and went to their stables and
Right,
such there. So
right.
it was kind of neat there. And so once we left Vienna, which again, a good city, but I wasn't totally impressed with it. Maybe because it was cold, I always want to get back to the boat,
Right.
and get back to warmth and food, basically. So that was kind of the thing there. So, but as you can tell on the map there, you start seeing our trail. We started in Bratislava, we went to Vienna. Now we're starting to hit a lot of these little towns.
Right.
And the first one hit was Dürnstein, and what was the most famous thing there was we had to walk up this hill about up to 3,000 feet. It took about an hour and 20 minutes. It was an old fort up at the top there. We walked all the way up there. My daughter was up there 20 minutes ahead of me. She just beat the hell out of me. So I had to catch my breath many times there. Said, well, slow down. I'll get there. So.
Youth has an advantage.
Oh
Jim.
yeah, right. She got up there pretty quickly, even though she's in her 40s. But she did a good job of getting up there, and but it was a little misty overlooking the valley. That particular
Right.
day it was the mist or the cold. I think it was a combination of both. So that was Dürnstein. The next town we hit was Melk, and the big thing there was they called the Melk Abbey, and oh gosh,
I've been there. It's great.
Oh, the church, there was this library, they all these manuals of books and everything, just
Right.
huge from top to bottom, and I guess you can go in there and do some, history checking, and
Yeah.
things of that nature, but they had an immense library. It's tremendous.
Right. I remember the paintings on the ceilings
Oh,
as well.
yeah. And then we took pictures going inside of it before we get into the church itself, and it's so huge, and just, again, the marvel at all the money and the icons, and it was overwhelming. That's all I
Yeah.
can say, I mean, it was so something. We couldn't take any pictures inside. We took pictures on the outside as we came out at night We got there like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. By the time we got out of the Abbey, it was dark, and we had to walk to the boat, so we walked instead of taking the bus back. And so we took pictures from the outside, and my daughter had some real good pictures. Mine didn't turn out as good. This new iPad they have, it can take better pictures than your cameras.
Oh, yeah.
They're much clearer, and they have a better scope, a better, surroundings and such. And so she bought me an iPad for Christmas I'll take on my next trip here.
There you go.
Yeah. So after Melk, which again was a very picturesque area, again, the Abbey is something to see. Went to a town called Linz. This is where we froze our butt up, basically. We went out that morning. It was snowing. It was everything. And I think after about 40 minutes, we came back to the boat and waited till the afternoon. I went back in the afternoon. The sun finally came out, got it warmed up a little bit. There wasn't a whole much to see in Linz there. And
Now, your time of year over there was what, December?
yeah, well, it's actually late November to December the 5th. So we got,
Okay.
I think, like November the 20th, something like that.
So it was pretty cold
It
over
was
there.
cold, yeah. If I would recommend anybody goes on that trip, go the first part of October or sooner.
Okay.
Because, then it's fall, and it's
Right.
just like what we have here. It's very similar. So it's a good time to go then. And but it was cold many times. So let's get back to the boat. Interesting thing about the boat is owned by Gate 1. So it's total
Okay.
Gate 1 people.
Right.
There's only like 90 couples on the boat, so it was really nice. It was a small group.
Right.
And so it made it very, very comfortable. In fact, we got an upgrade because they had asked one evening there how many trips people it took, and I happened to be the one that had the most trips. So we
Okay.
gave you an upgrade. Instead of having a room down the stairs where you looked out the window,
Right.
we had a sliding glass door so we could see and see as we're traveling down the river. So
fantastic.
we had a beautiful view.
Wow.
I mean, and without no extra cost, which was really nice. And but unfortunately, almost half the time we were traveling at night, we went through, as you pointed out, I think we went through something like 30 locks.
Right.
And traveled about 700 miles from Bratislava all the way to Regensburg, Germany. I didn't realize we had traveled that far,
Yeah.
but they moved quite quickly.
Yeah, most of their travels at night.
Yeah, mostly at night, exactly. It wasn't. We docked in the morning, then you did, your tours basically outside. Then the next town after that was Linz. It was just another town. As I say, it was cold. The only thing I remembered about that town, they had a sign there that says, because there were some people from Australia there, it says, "No kangaroos allowed." There was a sign there on
really?
one of the souvenir shops. I took a picture of it because they had a couple of signs like that. They had one in one of the towns there. I can't remember which one it was. They had a picture of this guy, a man working, and they had this guy crawling out of a manhole.
Oh,
And
been there.
Did you see that one?
Yeah.
Wasn't that neat there?
Yeah.
I mean,
Guys looking up out of
yeah,
the
he's looking
manhole.
out of there. So
Made out of copper, I think.
yeah, it was. Everybody's shines their head and everything else. and
Right.
coming out of the manhole there, and they have a sign there that says, man working or something like that. Now we'll have maybe in the pictures there. And there's another one we had was in Salzburg that says. They show a car, no driving into the river.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, they just have a sign, please don't drive in the river with your
Yeah.
car. I mean, they have some crazy signs there in Europe, which is kind of neat. So.
You know, the thing that impressed me, in almost every one of those river towns you went to, they had some place in town where they had the flood levels
Oh, did
posted
they?
on the sides of the buildings.
No kidding, we never
So
saw that.
You never saw that?
No.
Well, anyway, in a couple towns you could see where the flood levels were over the
kidding.
second floor. It was,
That'd be scary to me.
yeah.
I mean, now the only thing I remember that is when I lived in Pennsylvania, they showed the Susquehanna River. You say, well, there when I was there back when they had the big storm in '68 and they had cows in the trees and everything else, and they showed it's almost impossible. They showed the river today. They said it had risen over 30 feet high.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's probably the same thing. When
That's
you go
some
to
of
the
some of these towns that you could see that they would have the year and the level
Oh, is that
posted
right? Oh.
along the side of some of the buildings.
Oh, my
So
gosh.
it was really interesting to see, and some of them got over this into
Yeah.
the second floors.
I'm sure, yeah. I mean, it can flood pretty bad because I know they got a lot of the mountains there with the snow and everything else, melting off there. Okay, after we went to Linz, we went to Passau, and we then we took the whole day. We went to Salzburg, where the Sound of Music was.
Right.
And it was something to see there. It was an old town, and it goes back, hundreds of years. In fact, we had dinner at one of the restaurants, which is over 500 years old. It was incredible. And then a couple of basic things there was certainly the restaurant, St. Peter's Cemetery. I mean, the cemetery with all these gravestones, everything else, just beautiful. You'll see some of those pictures there, just incredible there.
Yeah.
Then the bridge, then actually the Sound of Music with just 3 or 4 major areas where they had the scenes in the movie, which was Mirabella Palace, and then the statues with, the 2 archangels there and the gate
Right,
there. We saw
right,
all that,
right.
you know, and there was a bridge there. People put locks in there, supposed to guarantee your life or love. I mean, your love with your wife. So you
Right,
put a lock
right,
in there,
right.
you throw the keys in the river, so your love lasts forever, or something like that. So
Jim,
just
we got
kinda-
about 5 minutes left.
Okay,
so
we're
we gotta
almost getting
kinda,
pretty move hustle on there. So,
Yeah.
so that was Salzburg. Well, again, a wonderful town to visit, something to really see there. Went to Regensburg after that. So, you know, Salzburg is something to see. There's so much to see again once you're there with the big castles there and the citadels there. Went to Regensburg, and it was kind of interesting there. A couple of things. There was a famous town of cuckoo clocks, and we saw that. And basically, then we went, the interesting thing, then we went to Prague, and this is the last place, what they call the Golden City, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And one thing there that I noticed, when we left on a Sunday morning, they do not allow any 18-wheelers on the German highways on Sunday.
Really?
From morning until 10 o'clock at night. So it's clear all the way to Prague.
Fantastic.
Unbelievable, you know. So they're all at these rest stops, all these 18-wheelers.
Yeah.
Once you get to Prague, you know, the Golden City, you know, and there's so much, again, wants to see there.
The
you
thing,
see-
I've been there a couple of times, and
Yeah.
I've been there traveling with bands.
Oh, is that right?
And both time I was there, there's the St. Charles Bridge that goes
Yep.
over the river.
Yep.
And there was a Dixieland band that was playing in the middle of the bridge.
You're kidding.
And I was there like 3 years apart, and the same band was playing there both times I was there. That's
No
kind of
kidding.
interesting.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, with all the statues, you know, on both sides of the
Right,
bridge.
right.
And took a picture of every one of those statues, you know, and there was like the swans down in the river there, and then you cross over. Then actually in Prague, you know, you got the astronomical clock there, which is something you see every hour on the hour. It has these like saints that travel around, and they had this skeleton of beats on some kind of a thing there. So every hour, everybody gathers, you know, it lasts about 4
Right.
minutes and over with, and everybody disperses, you know. Again, one of the areas there was again, the Christmas festivities, all these buildings again and things of that nature. Then they had the Citadel where the Prime Minister lives, a beautiful place to go see the church. And they had the guards outside, you know, and everything.
Oh,
They had
yeah,
some armed
right.
guards there and everything.
Right.
Again, a great place to visit there and something to really see there.
The thing I remember is I didn't get to the church, but there's a huge church. It took them over 700 years to build
Oh,
this church.
oh, God,
and you can see this thing from the downtown area. It kind of sits up on a hill.
Yeah, that's it, right there. He sits on a hill there, and that's
Right.
it. You know, that's where the Prime Minister lives. We visited the Jewish quarter naturally with the synagogues and everything. Saw the cemetery. You had to pay to see, you know, this here, and we saw the statue of Moses there and the guards there, and then they had the most expensive street to buy things like, you know, Gucci and all that. They call it Parazika Street. And it's interesting, all along these streets, all these BMWs and Mercedes, all these cars, they were expensive cars.
Right.
They're all over the place here in
Oh, yeah.
Czechoslovakia. I couldn't believe it. So how can they afford it, you know? And finally, we had a chance to go up to Wenceslas Square, where, you know, basically where the Czechs you know, went against the communism, and this is where communism fell in 1989 in Wenceslas Square.
Right.
Which I think it's about something like about 200 foot wide and about almost a half a mile long. We walked all the way up to the Wenceslas Castle, and
Okay.
there was something to see there. It was unbelievable. So again, there's so much to see there in Prague. Like I said, I enjoyed Prague more than I liked Vienna. I mean, there's so much to see, and it was just a great town. They had all the mimes, you know, and all the different squares and such. So again, a great visit, great trip, and I would recommend it to anybody.
Jim, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. I want
Hey, wait a minute.
I want to travel all over the world,
I'll
buddy.
take it in my suitcase next time. How's that? That's what everybody talks about. You know.
Well, I have taken part of that trip, and it's a
Yeah,
great trip.
it's a
But
great
I like
trip.
to do it in the summer, not the winter.
Yeah, I strongly right. Don't do it in the summertime between, like, say, June and the end of August. Do it like September on. You know, it's the best
Right.
time to go. There's not as many tourists.
Okay. Well, Jim, thanks for sharing your experience with us. It's been great having you on the show, and we hope to see you again soon.
Great, thank you. We'll be in a couple months. We'll be back again.
All right.